Well, folks, thanks and welcome to another Comic Book Wednesday. This guy's in the house. That's right. The man himself. He oogles over very expensive Dallas Cowboy helmets because he has delusions of grandeur about their success into the wild. He makes very strange Velociraptor sounds and coerces his wife into watching what sound to me like horrible films. But he's a brother that I love. I enjoy making him laugh with the most uncomfortable jokes I can possibly come up with because that is who I'm here for. I am like the crazy white uncle that's been invited to Thanksgiving to make all of Ego's side of the family uncomfortable and make all of Shira's family blush and be embarrassed. I am that guy. I am Pops. Ego, my brother, I can't believe you keep coming back, but here we are. Let's talk some stuff and have some fun, brother.
Man, you're always awesome. Man. It's always great being on here, man. Thanks for having me back again.
So I reached out and said, listen, we haven't talked comic books in a while. I know you're always reading something, grabbing something, things like that. For those of you at home that don't know, where we have a hard time is he reads like graphic novels. So he'll just grab a graphic novel and he's reading. So when he says Brightest Day or he says Blackest Night, I've got to figure out like what graphic novels he's reading because he doesn't mean issues 1 through what he means volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. Mm-hmm. So I have to translate. So for me, if there's moments where it doesn't seem like we're totally on the same page, that would probably be why. So with that, and it was cool because it was a good time to talk about something like this because almost I don't want to say a Halloween theme, but it is a pretty dark and edgy mainstream comic story arc, right? I mean, it's pretty cool. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How on earth did you end up with like, I want to read Blackest Night? Or did you read stuff that led up to it?
I think I accidentally read War of the Green Lanterns.
Okay.
And I was wondering where all the colors came from.
Right.
Because I'm looking at like War of the Green Lanterns. Why is there a red one? Why is there a blue one? Where all these colors come from? And so I went back and I read the Sinestro Corps War.
Yep.
Which is where Sinestro actually gets out of jail that the Guardians place him in, and he goes around just recruiting all the Yellow Lanterns that he can. And most of all the action figures I have that are up here are from Blackest Night. I don't know. I should have taken them out, but they have right up here. It's like I think I have like 30 action figures from that whole arc. And so one of them I have is like Cyborg Superman that becomes a Yellow Lantern. Sinestro's Yellow Lantern. There's a guy named Arkillo that is a Yellow Lantern. And they try to go against the Green Lanterns, and of course they fail. But what they did was they awakened something called like the Black Lantern. Mm-hmm. And once the Black Lantern gets going, anyone that actually dies turns into a Black Lantern. And so that like Wonder Woman dies at one point. Aquaman dies at one point, Superman dies at one point, and they all turn these Black Lanterns. And so they figure out that if you defeat death, you actually have to have all of the emotional spectrum. And so that means like there was will that they introduced for the Green Lantern, but that's not the only emotional response in the emotional spectrum. You can have rage, you can have compassion, you can have fear, you can have what was the other one? Avarice or greed, and you can have love. And so you've had to fight death with those. And so it was really just a great overarching theme of, not necessarily how you defeat death, but you have to basically be in control of your emotions, to avoid a situation that might put you in death's way.
So this dates back to around 2009, so it's been a minute. And for those of you who are not real familiar with this area, Jeff Johns is really, really integral in sort of a lot of this development. He's working with sort of like 2 artists, obviously Ethan Van Sciver, many of you guys know because of his YouTube presence and some of the stuff he's done now independently. Ivan Reis as well, he does the art on the main Blackest Night run. He's doing most of that art. They basically create a spectrum of other colors because obviously yellow has been tied to fear, green is will, but that like you were going through Ego, you're talking about red being rage, things like that, violet being love, things like that. And Blackest Night just kind of kicks off this concept of think characters that have died are brought back, and it starts with something that's very integral into recent events. So you kind of have to kind of go with it if you're not going to kind of go backwards and figure some stuff out here. And he's going to Bruce Wayne's gravesite and pulls out his skull and that kind of thing. So, but you get this explosion, if you will, of these black rings, and they're basically doing flesh, basically. So it's kind of what they're
Pretty
saying.
much.
And in the meantime, what they do in the story is he sort of kind of goes through a who's who, right? So in order for everyone who's reading along to know who everybody is, so it'll say, Katma Tui died at the hands of Star Sapphire. Okay, so she's dead, right? You move a little longer. This is the famous Kyle Rayner, the fridging scene of Alex. So
Oh,
Alex was murdered by
boy.
the psychopath named Major Force. This is the famous fridging comic book, things like that, right? This is the death of Jade. So you start to run through this sort of like who's who, who's dead, and why. They visit all of these different characters. There's even a mausoleum that we get to, I think, a couple issues later, where they have something. And here's where Arthur Curry, at this point in this story in the DC universe, Arthur Curry is dead. So
Mhm.
I will say on the reread of this, and I think I got through the main Blackest Night story. I reread all of that. I didn't really get through. I mean, there's a million crossover issues and things like
There
that.
is.
I didn't see anything in the crossover list that stuck out at me that I remembered. Oh, I really should have to read that. But I will say there are some good writers and artists in that bundle of stuff back then. Peter Tomasi comes to mind, but there are others. What is your take on like the concept of how they integrated using death, the black one, as sort of like your jumping off point to have an excuse to not only have the different colors, but a
Mhm.
purpose for the different colors, which I think is really what was the coolest part of all this is little, is it a spoiler to bring up the white light? Like, why would they know?
I mean, it technically is the brightest day from the Blackest Night, and that's in their creed.
Right.
So
Well,
I didn't think
Dove.
that
So
much. Yeah.
Hawk and Dove is a character team up, and at this point, in this again, Hawk is deceased, but Dove exists, and she emits this bright white light. And when she does, she's obviously creating a counterbalance, pushing back, not necessarily a destruction of these Black Lanterns, but she's at least repelling this rising of the dead zombie version of their former selves. And that's where it occurs to the other lanterns. Oh crap, if we combine all of these different emotions. So imagine being a Green Lantern and going, well, I guess I'm going to have to go and recruit a red guy and a yellow guy and a purple person, and I got to recruit all of them, and then I've got to convince them that we have to combine our powers to create white light to win. That is the story arc, and it is full of just cameos and moments,
Yes.
and it's a roller coaster ride. Because you said you had kind of stumbled across all the different colors and things like that. What was it like going through Blackest Night for the first time? Like you're just turning pages and they're just like character dumping on page with you. I mean, there were just so many characters being brought out.
Yeah, I think the art was the thing that really stuck out to me, just because I started reading or rereading comics around 2009, and that was with like Batman and Son and Flash Rebirth. So
Mm-hmm.
I was used to mature art like this.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's proportion. I can see their age on their face. Everyone's got the muscular proportions, but don't look overly exaggerated. It looks artistic without being cartoony. And so, excuse me, after reading more and more and more, you see the art kind of take a nosedive a little bit to look flat and two-dimensional. And when I was reading this, I'm like, this is what I'm used to. Stick with this form. And so for me, it's seeing them take advantage of all the deaths that have occurred without trying to make it cheesy, hokey, or feel like they're cheating, trying to just
Mm.
bring them back for the sake of bringing them back. And the only person that I really trust with a rebirth of any sorts is Jeff Johns. And so when I'm reading through this and like it's all making sense, it's all flowing naturally. It's almost like you are watching a TV show where each page that you're seeing a different character is a cutaway to what's happening with them. And you're checking
Yeah.
back in with all these characters throughout the book. But
Yep.
even in this shot, it's moving.
Yep.
Nothing is stagnant, even though it's technically a still drawing. I can still see there's action behind everything that's happening, not with just the words that's coming out. So you're just
Yeah. John's.
soaking all it in. Yeah.
Yeah. John's and Ivan. I'm going to say Ivan Reese. I think some people pronounce it as Ivan Rice. I actually don't know the correct pronunciation. I apologize to him and his family. We'll put a pin in the Jeff Johns as a great adaptation for film and movie because we can come back to that. I 100% agree with you. If you do not want spoilers on Blackest Night, I need to have you pause for a moment because I need to show you something because I think it illustrates what he is trying to get at. This is the shocking change of pace and drama with the movement. Look at the action that we have here, and it's done through the way the body language is, and because we draw such intricate detail and the way that they're so perfectly proportioned and things like that. There's so much movement and things happening. Yes, it's a two-dimensional drawing, but look at this. You can just feel everything moving around and all the projections forming and taking shape and that kind of thing. So,
and the scale of it all too. You
yeah,
can see
yeah,
there's so much, even in the little bubbles they compressed, that they're
yep,
trying to miniaturize the whole thing, but it's huge.
yeah, yeah. Very, very good stuff. And I want to get just to briefly, here's our first look at just some of and very much a zombie feel of things. They rise and they're calling for flesh and those kinds of things. And then you get to this big twist, which is this attack on Hawkman and Hawkgirl by a resurrected elongated man and Sue. So
Wow.
this is really beautiful, bloody and graphic and intense, and just very, very. It just drew me right in. Like it just totally sucked me in. Like I gotta have more. Gotta have more.
Yeah.
And I think this is what Johns does best. He just does this great mini story arcs. He does these really. I think even things I don't think are very good, like in New 52, his Aquaman, even his Justice League for X number of issues. These little stories are fine, and that is what was trying to be adapted on screen. And I think if they had left it with the original concept of the Justice League showing up and the mother boxes and Darkseid, and we didn't have to have some of this stuff derailed into all these other weird concepts, it would have been fine. We would have had great, I think, maybe not a great end result, but a very, very good end result, and not the discombobulated mess that we ended up with.
Agreed.
So this moves very, very quickly. There are also very much multiple hardcovers. There's a director's cut of this series because it's been out for so long. There are variant covers of everything. It's a little harder to be critical of variant covers these days. Whenever back then we still had like 14 different versions of variant covers, but all right. But you can see just this is how the scene that we were at was left. It's a freaking bloody mess before we get to where we are and other stuff. So, were there any characters that you were introduced to or thought about and was like, man, I'm not sure I even know much about that, and that sent you down at least a little bit of another rabbit hole?
I think I'm trying to remember if they talked about the Indigo Lanterns in this one or
Hmm.
where they are, but
Yeah,
I guess
briefly.
I guess the Indigo Lanterns was the one that was confusing because you look at it like compassion and love. What's the difference? I get that you can love someone that fiercely, but what kind of compassion can you have? Then I
Hmm.
looked it up and I found out they're all ex-convicts.
Hmm.
And you're just like, wow, if there's anyone that would need compassion, it's
Hmm.
ex-convicts and killers. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that was the most intriguing part of the Lanterns that they introduced as a group. But just reading through it, I just wanted to see what part everyone had to play in it. And I,
Yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. That was for me too. Like Phantom Stranger and Spectre, I thought were really like, whoa, this is going to be cool, and they deliver in a way that made me really enjoy what their version and role would be in all of this. I thought that was really cool. And of course, I've always been a huge fan. I actually missed, again, October just gets away from me, man, because I wanted to do a Dead Man revisit. There's a mini series by Dead Man that was written by Mike Barron and drawn by Kelly Jones. And it was one of my early books that I just got lucked into, and I've always cherished it. And I wanted to do a reread and a rewatch video on that. But I've always loved Dead Man. And I think it is just this, he's the bridge between the life and afterlife. And DC always kept that gate open. Whereas in the Marvel
Yes.
side, I always felt like Bucky always stayed dead until he didn't. But when I was reading comics back then, Bucky did stay dead. It was a lot longer. It was way along the way before we ended up with the Winter Soldier story, which actually, to be honest, was fine. It actually made sense with how they would bring Bucky into it. But here we see just multitudes of characters having different roles to play. And I think what you said earlier, like in a cheesy way, not in a cheesy
Oh
way. Look at
yeah,
that. Look at that
a lot.
shocking display of, Barbara and Jim in the background with Hal just crashing into the bat signal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're dealing with zombie Aquaman.
Oh, man.
And they don't know what to do. Yeah. And here's Dead Man. This is our first view of Dead Man, who's like totally traumatized by all this. Like he would be the character to be like, no, wait, whoa, we can't have all of this death and dismay. This is not good for my soul. It is only 6 issues. I thought it was longer. Than that. But yeah, this is a lot of fun.
I was trying to figure out if they only made it 6 issues just because they knew they were going to do Brightest Day right after, and they wanted to make it condensed so that you could jump into Brightest Day. I know that Blackest Night is, at least with the omnibus hardcover that's out, that one's supposed to be bigger, but I think they wanted to keep it kind of streamlined right into Brightest Day because they were doing their rebirths right after that, I think.
Well, it didn't come out. It's not like 6 issues that came out monthly. I think it was about every other month because this took about a year to get through.
That's why. Okay.
Yeah, and then it was every bit of us, like I said, a setup to what comes next, and also, I think at a time where I still felt like they were very much plotting and planning everything out very, very well. Like this was still in a nice heyday of Aquaman and Green Lantern and just some of the, like you said earlier, like this is, I mean, that's a beautiful panel right there,
Full of detail, yeah.
Yeah, and just like you said, action. Look at the water splashing, the laser blasters going off to the side, and the blood splatter, and yeah, this is what comic books should be for me, anyway. So,
well, that's what I said. I mean, that know that at least the WB with what they're doing animated, they just pick different events that have happened in comic book history and just turn it into a movie. And I'm thinking, if there was ever a movie you could have just thrown out without really having to explain to people, a lot of people would have watched this because it's zombies, it's team up, and there's emotions involved that you have to actually use to defeat death. And even if you made it a 2-parter, Brightest or Blackest Night and Brightest Day, there wouldn't be a lot that you had to explain. And I think
but I think you could.
I
I think you would. I mean, again, Pops has the magic wand, is in charge of DC Studios. I would want a 5-film deal, so I would have some sort of Green Lantern, Sinestro Corps War setup, then have a Blackest Night, maybe a 2-parter, like you say, Brightest Day, and then sort of like this is where we're going to go forward now with whatever our relaunch would be. It's almost like you could have an excuse to sort of revamp your entire thing without having sort of a crisis event, which creates all sorts of new problems and questions. This is the kind of story where you're like, you can have characters that are resurrected or changed, or this is your new version of what they're going to go forward. You don't have to explain every minutia. Like Jeff Johns just spends a panel explaining to you different lanterns and what they're doing and why they're involved with certain pieces but not others, and they cut away and you're into like a completely different, like this is the panel that I'm at now where you're back underwater again with Mira after a quick graveyard scene with Spectre and Zatanna and stuff like that. So just everything moves around so rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to be honest too, one of the things that works the best through the whole story, and are you familiar with how well Hal and Barry play off each other? Like Flash and GL together, Hal and Barry together is so core. Just as like Superman and Batman need to play off each other, like Clark and Bruce need to play off each other, Hal and Barry need to play off each other. It's so key to keeping everything in the universe working well, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. I mean, it worked so well for me. I think they've tried it other times when they try to do Wally West and Kyle Rayner, because they tried to make the personalities kind of similar, but they were the younger versions of themselves. And Flash and Green Lantern just in general work off each other really well. no matter who you try to put in. But I think Hal and Barry make the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, hey, we know we're not Batman and Superman, but we understand each other and we're the top of what we do, but we still need each other. So I really like the way they played off each other as well.
So I just wanted to jump ahead a little bit to where you just, and we're not going to go much further with this because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't read it. I definitely can encourage you, even if you don't read the Sinestro Corps or the War, the Green Lantern War, and things like that. Up to it's fine. You can jump in enough. He gives you enough to go on, and you get moments like this that totally get you caught up. This is beautiful, man.
It
You
is
get
fantastic.
all the different rings coming together. Who has each ring? Right. This is
Atrocitus.
Atrocitus, Star Sapphire, and this is the Indigo that you were talking about with Compassion, and then Larfleeze is over here. So,
Yes.
yeah, I love him. He is so underrated in this book. He's
Yes.
really, really fascinating character.
Yes.
In this, so.
I've been looking for his book.
Mm,
At one point it was like $80 and I never saw it again. I wanted to get it. Like his action figure took me like 6 months to find. So I mean,
interesting.
yeah, but it's just it's a really interesting character because everyone else has multiple rings for their lantern, and Larfleeze just has one because he's that greedy. All his constructs are dead or things that he's controlled. And it's just one
Right.
person. So I really loved it.
Right. I think it's a great recommend, my friend. It's a great recommend. Appreciate that.
Definitely.
That's good. It's a good fit. Good fit for us to start there. So that was
Yeah.
awesome. So.
And if you ever get a chance, the Green Lantern New 52, where Kyle Rayner is the White Lantern, they actually go through him acquiring each ring and having to know what it feels like to embody all the emotions. And that's where it especially helps out when he doesn't want to feel rage, but he's shown that you can have righteous rage. And they take him through all the emotions so that he can actually harness them to become a White Lantern. It's a really good book that I love from the New 52. I think it's about 3 volumes, but if you want a further explanation of how the emotional spectrums work, like that's the one to read.
Okay. Okay. Your next suggestion or things that you've been spending some time in was something I was not familiar with. I just really had not gotten to it. You probably had this on your recommend list somewhere along our ways, and I
Yeah.
just didn't get to it yet. So this is called Radiant Black. It's
Yes.
over at Image. Image, of course, if you guys go over there, let me make a note to put the link for Image because you can read every single #1 issue for free over at Image. You can try just about anything out. So that's always kind of cool to see if this would be for you. You don't have to just take my word on it. You can kind of take a look at it as well. I try to spoil some, but not necessarily always spoil without letting you know I'm going to. Give everybody a little heads up on Radiant Black and what they can expect. Kyle Higgins and Marcelo Costa.
All right. So I'm trying. I know it's between 2 friends, Nathan and Marshall, and this was actually like the scene that sets it all is he's actually returning back from LA back to Illinois, a few hours or 45 minutes away from Chicago. And he actually was looking to get a loan at the very beginning of this, and they're saying, "Hey, we can't extend out any more loans to you. You're already pretty much in debt." And he starts crying, and then someone just opens the door, sits behind him, and they're like, "Hey, you gonna be able to drive me where I need to go?" And he's an Uber driver, and you're just like, "Wow, this is a pretty hard hit so fast." So I mean, he's coming back home. He's already feeling bad about it himself. Yeah. Oh, it was this threw me within the first page or two because that was what I went through after I graduated and the 3 or 4 months it took me to get a job when I moved back to Philly. And so it's both friends just catching up and trying to remember which one's Nathan and which one's Marshall because they kind of switch and go back and forth on here. But
Oh, right. So Nathan is your main character, the one that was
yes,
struggling. So that's
Nathan.
the one that had to
Here we
return
go.
home. That's the one that's the blonde. The brunette guy is Marshall.
Yes.
They're out. Obviously, Marshall's had a little bit to drink. They're staggering in the weather, and then suddenly this moment happens where basically,
Yes.
spoiler alert based on the title, right? Radiant energy. So imagine radiant
Yes.
energy. So then he
Yes.
becomes this.
Yes. And it does kind of read like it's almost a a Power Ranger kind of transformation. But his buddy's right there to witness the entire thing. And I like how they kind of tried to use technology and figure things out here. And he's trying to figure out what exactly is going on. But I like the fact that usually when you see these things happen, the person that gains superpower is by themselves, and then they have to try to explain it to the friend. But this will then cut right to it, and then you're trying to figure out how's this going to work if you've done that, and the police are right there, maybe not have seen the whole thing, but are trying to say move out of the way. And
I would say, I just want to interject here. I also like the fact that the police are really not that freaked out by a dude in a suit and that has powers. Like they kind of react like, holy crap, what just happened? And then they're also sort of like, well, that just happened. You know what I mean? So I really like that part because it does set up something that happens later on. We get a little tease of the Radiant Red character as well.
Yes.
And then we move on to another issue. Let me get to the bottom where it'll click over for us.
This one.
There we go.
Yeah. And so once you get there about the issue, when you find out, okay, so I'm guessing there are probably going to be other Radiants, and so it introduces them slowly to the point where you're like, okay, well, I'll wait for the next one, but I'll keep reading the story.
Right.
And I think
it does all the things that a modern comic would do. Like, look, Image is not. I hate the fact that any of us will take our praise sometimes. We do a lot of praising of Image comics, right? Because they get a lot of things right. But let's not pretend that they're not woke or that they don't have all these elements and virtue signals and things like that. They purposely have characters that are, the girl is a Hispanic gamer and she becomes radiant pink. Right.
Yes.
Then you have the elderly black dude who becomes radiant yellow. Because he can perceive time. Then the Asian school teacher. It's like, so you have all these different things that kind of play. I actually think similar to what you said, and I didn't even think of this until you said it. In our messaging back and forth, I think is where you said it first was the Power Ranger reference, and I was like, wow, yeah. You're right, because the Power Rangers had Asian person and blah blah. Exactly, that really does help represent a nice cultural event that we can all just enjoy our process together. Like there was no real weird, and there's a moment, I think you said it right, where Marshall has to become the Radiant Black for a while, a few issues in, right? He switches and he's Radiant Black. Wait, so all these things is a nice, fun journey for Image.
It is, yeah.
I like this part too, where they do this in a lot of books. I think Local Man has a moment like this. There's another Image book that was like this too. Kid has to go home, live with mom and dad, sit at a table. You're going to get a job. Don't have money. What's going on? It's a little tedious because it's like a trope that's been done too many times. But this is all fine for its story. I felt like it was all fine. It is a lot of sitting and talking though, for my taste compared to other books. But it's not the worst thing in the world because we jump right into we are going to have a story. So.
Yes.
I like the cops a lot, actually.
I do. I was surprised it took them so long after this scene for them to show back up, but it was just good to like, hey, we're the police. You said his name. We know what you look like. We know where you live.
Yeah, remember we saw you the other night? Yeah, we're on the heels of this other dude, but it's like it looks like you, but it was red. Was that you? No, I'm blue. I'm like, wait, I'm black. No, wait. Okay. So I liked all that. Yeah, the Uber montage made me kind of smile a lot, where it's just like different people in the back, all sorts of different things. And as somebody, I know someone who's like an Uber person who was like keeping a log. It's going to like do like the memories of an Uber driver or something like that. And it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I can be a superhero. So we get to Radiant Red. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and I think with this one, and then it takes a while to figure out what each individual Radiant's power is. You find out with Radiant Red, it's like accumulating mass on there. I'm trying to for Radiant Black, I think it's more of just being quick and it's slightly emotionally based on there too. But yeah, as you keep reading, you see what each one's power set is.
Yeah, this was a great. I really I didn't get past the equivalent of the first volume in Ego's language, right? Volume 1, which I think is 6 issues. That's kind of where I ended up. Yeah, I was good. I can see why this got nominated for an Eisner as far as being a really good start to a series because you set up a lot of characters, power sets, the world they live in. Here you have the great moral compass of, oh, dude, it's like the entire motivation of having the story is he's, $40,000 in debt as an Uber driver. What do I
Broke.
do?
Yeah.
It's like he got a bag of money that falls in his lap and he's like, fine.
Uh,
He drops
yeah.
it back off to the police and it says, I think you lost this, right? And just flies away. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just is so great. And then dad's cool with it. Like, hey, made a couple $100. Oh, good job. You did good. So I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you recommended it because not something I had jumped back into reading again.
Yeah.
And some of the art is not
Oh,
my thing. Like it's not
it's
totally my thing, but I'm okay with the universe there.
yeah.
Here's the thing. You guys hear me
Generally,
complain a lot. This is consistent.
uh-huh.
So my bigger problem is when it's not consistent. Like pick a lane,
Right.
folks.
Yeah. Now, I would say I like the fact that toward you see this towards the end, if especially if you're reading the volumes towards the end, they start showing you the life of the rate of the Radiants before they became Radiants. And once I read hers, I totally understood why she became why what her intentions were because when she became Radiant Red. It was I don't know if you read this part.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I just
Okay,
wanted to
yeah, yeah,
stop here because I have to
yeah.
be critical. He
Okay,
doesn't
go ahead.
have a face at all.
Face.
He has no face. He's the question. He's like just no face. So sorry, I have to be at least a little bit consistent with my criticism. So no, she has a great backstory. I love the fact that stuff like this is really really cool. When things like
Yeah,
this happen, thrown in the debris, she's reaching out. Next thing you know, she's becoming this
gotcha.
radiant red. There she is. So she's a different version of what she is. So you kind of get, okay, what is she? What is she? What does this mean? So, yeah, I really am enjoying the journey and the process. Oh yeah, fat guy's beard was a little
It's weird.
sketchy.
He looked like what was Popeye's nemesis? Bruto,
Oh yeah,
Bruto,
yeah,
Bruto,
Bluto.
Bruto.
You know what so if I wrote a character like this and the art came back like that in the next
Yeah.
issue, I would have a scene where he's in the bathroom and he's using that like grease and color stuff on it. So I could let them keep drawing it the way they drew it, but I'd be mocking the fact that it's drawn this way. So it's a little over the top for me. But yeah, there's a lot of financial conversations and
Yeah.
motivations as well as far as like what's going on, how you end up in this mess. So yeah, I like all this. Here's confrontation about finances as well. And then she punches the wall and destroys the wall. And he's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. So yeah.
Yeah. I guess and then you as you watch it, you see that the powers kind of mimic their personalities. Like she's absorbing all of these things that are happening to her, and it goes into the actual radiant red of her being someone's able to just absorb and gain mass, and actually use it as a power
Yeah.
with her personality.
Like I said, I didn't really get past the first volume, the 6 issues. What are your thoughts on a couple of the other ones? How far did you go, and where are you
I
at on some of the? Stay high
I
level
was
for me, so we don't have any major spoilers. But
that's fine.
yeah,
I finished volume 4 and I can't wait for volume 5. Because
okay,
after the fact that you said that Marshall winds up becoming the other Radiant because of something that happens. Won't spoil that for
hmm
you guys because that was a spoiler in itself. They show you the journey that Marshall has to take with him being Radiant Black and how he actually has to make a very tough decision about do you franchise out your hero if you're the hero, or do you just do the right thing for no accolades? Because he saw how it went for Nathan, he's like, well, I know I can't be Nathan, I'm Marshall. But because Marshall has pretty much had to grow up on his own, that comes out when he gets angry or upset as the Radiant Black. And as you go on, you see that they start to diverge in how they treat the Radiants. And then by the end of volume 4, there's a decision that I guess if the Radiant Orb could talk, it tells them there's a choice that has to be made in volume 4. And so while you're reading that, they give you little tidbits about Radiant Pink and Radiant Yellow. And Radiant Yellow, because he's the one that does time, they kind of do it like what's his name? Doctor Strange, where his head's doing all the permutations and
Oh,
everything.
right. Okay.
But when you actually read what's happening to him, you getting three panels at a time, and it's going back and forth between present, past, future,
Okay.
past, future, present, and
Yeah.
it's you're reading and it's kinetic. But they do the art distinctly enough so you can tell when he's young, present, old. So when you jump between them, you can actually tell. And so
Hmm.
I really like the fact that they show the man that he was and the man that he is now and how he got there and what he's trying to do to change the course of a timeline in the future. Um, Radiant Pink is kind of the one that's fun for me to read because she's trying to be a live streamer and dealing with life, but her microphone breaks and she's freaking out because she's got this huge live stream planned and she's monetized. So she's like, "Oh my god, I need money to actually pay for stuff, but my microphone's broken. I have to go to Best Buy to get it fixed." And by
That's a
the
little close
way,
to home.
oh, yeah, it's so close. That's why I'm like, I need her to succeed, please.
And I think
But
they've all gotten little mini series. I don't know exactly
they
where all the
do.
mini series have come out yet or not, but I know that they've all got a lot of them
So
have mini series.
Radiant Red is out now. And I think by the time you get to Radiant Red's end, it kind of folds in with Volume 4. Because when
Okay.
I see her, I didn't know that that's what happened to her until I started reading it. I'm like, okay, I have to go get Radiant Red. Um, and the weird thing is, I don't know if you saw in the dialogue where they're talking about Cowl. And I don't know, like they were reading the Cowl, they were reading it or talking about going to see the movie Cowl. And the thing is, I found
Oh,
out
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Hmm.
Cowl is actually a comic book that Image made, and they're referencing
Oh,
a book they
so
made.
okay, little self-referential stuff there. Okay, that's
Yeah, it
cool.
was really
Inside
cool. I didn't even,
baseball, good
yeah,
stuff.
I didn't know that. It was cool. And so the
Okay.
references are great. And I like the fact that Marshall's personality is I don't have a product, but I know how to market it. Nathan is like, I don't know if I'm good enough for what's been given to me. And so you see how everyone deals with finding the radiant and you find out what makes them special. And I think the thing that for me was when Nathan got it, he didn't feel special at all. And he built up 4 years worth of failure and they come out in one conversation that he has with Marshall. And it's the scene
Hmm.
like right after he throws up, he just says,
Nope.
I don't know what to do with my life. And now that I've been
Yeah.
given some, I don't know how I'm going to treat it or even if I'm worthy of it. And so it was, it just made me, it's how I felt 8 or 9 years ago after
Hmm.
I graduated. You're told that you're going to do these great things after you become a doctor and you figure out you don't feel any different. People don't treat you any different. And you
Yeah.
wonder, is it even worth it? And so
Right.
once you get an opportunity for it, you kind of get imposter syndrome with it too. So it harkened back to me that that's kind of what life is like. And whether you get a radiant black or a job, you can still kind of feel the same way. I can't fly,
Cool.
but it just
Very
harkened back.
cool.
It was really great. Yeah.
There you go, folks. Radiant Black. I'll put the link in the description there, so you can go over to Image and check out that number one issue. And again, just a reminder, you can check out any of their number one issues as well. So I will give you only a couple minutes to convince me on why I should give Batman Failsafe. I couldn't do it again. I read it. They sucked me in. I did videos on it. I thought Jorge Jimenez art is amazing. It made me wanted Jorge Jimenez Justice League. And then it couldn't stick the landing with the way they deal with Batman, and he's dead but not dead, but then he's in space and it's retarded, and I'm like, I can't. So should I look past all that, or am I like, no, you're right, Posse didn't really stick the landing, but I bought the hardcover and I read it and I threw it out there, and you called me out on the fact that it's got a bad ending. Go, there you go.
Okay. I will say that everything lead up to dead but not dead, in space but not quite there. Okay, they didn't really stick the landing on that one. Okay, I'm just saying, can you at least if you would try reading the follow up? I'm trying to figure out which one it is because I know that there's a follow up to Failsafe.
Yeah,
on
where
there.
he's in like an alternate universe or something, and I'm like, oh, crap, come on, man, you're cheating. I
I
was like, oh, come on, and it's like
I
all
know.
these backstories. I hate that. I couldn't stand the backstories. I'm like, okay, listen, look, Chip, if this story matters so much to you, then freaking either have a flashback or have a cut. Oh, it was
That's
driving
fair.
me nuts, brother. I listen. I
That's
think there's
fair.
so many positives, and then they do. It's one of these like 40-60. Like 40% of it is is really good, and you got like 10% that's probably great. But then you get all these other things, and it's like the same thing I see with like Disney stuff. It's like the pacing is all a problem too. It's like this is so good, so good. Oh wait, we're gonna stop the comic book for a moment. We're gonna have a backstory about Catwoman, and we'll explain to you why that matters in 3 issues from
3
now if you
issues.
read all of the backstories. And you're like, okay, you're just cheating. But
Go ahead.
Jorge Jimenez art for 3 issues in particular is
It's
worth checking
good.
out for sure. The
It's
first three
it's
issues in particular were like, this is
it,
rock solid, good stuff.
I mean, I would say this. I know that there's not going to be a book where Batman is going to die. For me, it's saying what did you have as your fail safe that how it affects other people when you're not there.
Hmm.
I think the fact that is it's Batman's story, it's Batman centric, and I'm not there, and I put in a fail safe. When that fail safe is activated, the acolytes you trained, how are they going to react? Is kind of what I look for.
Everyone acted
If
right. Like Nightwing was Nightwing, Robin
that's
was the right Robin. I didn't have anything. Trust me, I was all in
okay,
until we
the
zapped him.
reveal.
And well, the space stuff was horrible. I couldn't do the space thing. It was so badly
That's
done. Like it was so. It's like they knew
yeah.
what they were doing. They knew what they wanted to do, and they thought,
Mhm.
"Oh crap, he doesn't actually have a real suit on." It's like he doesn't. They just make a reason he would survive, and you're like, "Okay, that doesn't make
I
any sense
any
whatsoever."
sense.
But
I know.
um,
I know.
um, yeah, it was fine. I mean, it's all just okay. But yeah, you snuck it in the
I
list on me, and I was like,
I tried. I was like, you know what? I at least I will take a dive and see if it works. It's for me. It's just I want to see if you're telling me that he's not there anymore. Is everyone you trained worthy of still keeping your mantle? Like when I read Robin War, that was really good because it's Dick Grayson has to step in. He's like, I cannot let this get out of hand. And
mm.
everyone's like, okay, I see you worthy of having the mantle. I know that you guys are never going to move off Bruce Wayne as Batman, but if you're going to say that you're not there, can your acolytes and your wards actually act like you've trained them for something like this to happen? I know you're going to
They
come back
don't.
at some point, but
The only
go
part I
ahead.
don't like is I don't like the term mantle because Bruce Wayne is Batman.
I
But
know
it's
that's
the responsibility of Gotham's defense. Like they can't let Gotham like it's like they're not going to move away. Well, Gotham's going to go to hell in a handbag. I'm going to Chicago now. Like I really hated some of the elements with some of the other stuff that they do where like the character's just somewhere else. Otherwise they would stumble across Batman if they stayed in Gotham. Whereas you're absolutely right. He would never be in a situation where if something happened to him
right.
that Gotham wouldn't be taken care of, they'd be able to step up. Now, I will say, I've grown up with Nightwing, so I'm a little spoiled. This is why there was outrage with Nightfall. When Nightfall actually happened and Bane breaks his back, there's going to be a new Batman. We were pretty ticked
Okay.
off that it wasn't Dick
You
taking
were
over.
okay.
We were mad. Oh yeah, John
Okay.
Claude and the whole armored Batman who's too violent, and we're like,
Yeah.
we don't like any of this. This is not what we want. We
Okay.
wanted Dick. We wanted Dick Grayson in the suit, even if it would create conflict with the other character. It worked itself out, and we were all still on board with reading the Batman titles.
Good.
So it's hard for me not to envision that Dick would take care of things.
Well,
And
did
that's
you ever? Did you read the ones where Dick Grayson becomes Batman and Damian
sure.
remains? Okay. Did you
Yeah, the
like
new
those?
52. I liked it
Yeah.
more than I thought I would.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of Damian. So yeah, Dick as Batman's fine. You recommended Black Mirror, which I've said is possibly one of the best Batman stories in
Yeah.
like a
I've
decade.
ever. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's a Dick Grayson story, basically, right? So, um,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, so I'm not opposed to Dick Grayson as
Yeah.
Batman.
And
I think it makes sense. But again, I think that the issue with Failsafe is not the infrastructure of the universe that they're playing in. It's like he had
yeah.
moments that he was trying to do, And then he didn't think through. No one in the room said, hey, by the way, he doesn't actually have an armored suit on right now, so he really wouldn't be able to survive this. This is dumb. And then it was like, oh, well, what about this? It's like, well, that doesn't make sense because of X, Y, and Z. So all the positives that he did were sort of undone by like major gaping holes. And then we go to the alternate universe thing, which was like a complete cheat for me. Because I'm like, first off, I know he's not dead. That wasn't what I wanted to have happen. And then two, it was like, okay, it was just you creating like flashpoint versions of characters is what you were trying to do. Like I felt like it was going to be a spin-off into something else and make new action figures. And so that's how I felt. So I do all that because I wanted to, we only have a few more minutes, but I have to traumatize Ego. Okay, he doesn't know I'm going to do this, right? So I usually, as many of you have watched, and I haven't done one, I think, for a minute, especially because I've been by myself, but I did one last week because it was Halloween. Well, we should do something horror related. I love Golden Age books because they're traumatizing, and you're never going to see them. So what is the most traumatizing Golden Age book I could think of? It is by far Crime Suspense Stories. You're not going to believe it, folks, if you've never seen this book. Crime Suspense Stories 22. It is the book that was used in Congress during the hearings to get.
What is this?
Yeah. So this is the book that was held up in the Congressional hearings on why they needed to have the comic book code. So if you go back and you Google pictures of the comic book code hearings, there's one picture, one of them's holding up this comic book. Because back then, horror basically become unchained, man. It become nuts. So this book is completely insane. So this is part of Jack Kirby.
Jack Kirby?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Look at the art.
Ooh.
Look at the art. The shadows and details. Like he has a hatchet in his hand behind his back. Oh, yeah. This is nuts. Look at this. This is a true horror comic book if there ever was one, right?
Wow.
Yeah, this is total like psycho murder. Look at the blood splatter. This is the kind of thing like horror movies could just adapt, right? I don't even have it big enough. Let me try to make it a little bit bigger. Wow. This is one of the problems with StreamYards, folks. It's a little hard to kind of gauge sometimes screen to screen and what works and doesn't work. So
yeah,
bear with me while I try to make it. It probably went a little too big, didn't it? There we go. Let's try that. So, yeah, this has been around a minute. For those of you who are not familiar with this book, this is a pivotal book in comic book history. Extremely graphic stuff and a great illustration of how graphic stuff did become, I think is what's important to understand, right? Because this is an EC comic book. It's a 10-center. I'm double checking the publishing date. It's 1954. So this is a 1950s comic book.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And look at the shadows. Look at the style. I mean, this is incredible. And you can find collections of these kind of books. You can find these reprints in like omnibus style, things like that. This is a very disturbing story of a dude that, hatchets somebody and kind of goes about his daily life. He's just doing some things, right? Goes to a comedy show, doing radio work, things like that. So, yeah. So, just really, really cool stuff is out there that you can find now to read. This is one of the second stories, and you can see there she's obviously a villain with a long pointy nose and the detail and that kind of thing. But look at the way they handled Monopoly Man with a monocle. I mean, just everyone's got all these very unique characteristics, right? This one doesn't have any ads. It stinks when they don't have ads. Some of them have ads, which is even really more fascinating when they have ads. So, yeah, there you go. So,
wow.
Yeah, here's a tease for the next issue. Yeah.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love to go back to some of these old ones because of the they had limitations in color, right? Because they didn't have the digital canvas of chaos, right? So in some ways, they have to become more creative. So part of what they do is they end up having very interesting character designs, so they make sure everybody looks the same because they don't have a way to make different colors. They can't really you don't have even nuanced shading like we were talking about earlier between Nathan and Marshall. Even though they have different colored hair, they don't really look alike at all. And even if just skin tone, they have little nuances that you can tell them apart. Whereas you go back then, what are you going to do? You have a bunch of primary colors and a few variations. You're like, well, you sure better be able to draw different faces. So There you go, guys. Took you back to 1954 for crime suspense. I didn't want to keep that cover up very long. I'm sure YouTube will not be happy with me, but yeah, it was traumatizing. That's why it was integral in our history. So, listen, brother, thank you so much for doing Comic Talk. This has been fun.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
If folks, if you have not seen it, you missed out, because yesterday was our throwback movie talk. We're going to do a throwback movie talk this week. So we for Halloween, we chose Scream. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you check the link for that as well. And go over to this guy's channel, man. Make sure you're connected to the cool stuff that he does. And he and his wife hanging out is just a blast. And I will say, a lot of the videos they put up to, they'll do like, I guess they're snippets, right? Because they're only like 6 minutes, 8 minutes. You can just let those play on top of one. Oh man, that's a blast, because they're just like pinging off one another, just hanging out, having a good time, having a laugh. It's the best. It's a lot of fun. So make sure you're doing that, folks. And as always, folks, thanks for watching, hanging out with me, talking comic books. It's crazy to believe I'm doing this. And appreciate you so much. We head into another month and head into the holidays and things like that. Please stay connected. Let me know what you want to talk about. And thanks for watching, everybody. I am Pops.